Okay, so for like the 7th time of attempting this video, let me just start by saying I'm sorry if you hear my kids in the background. They're in the living room raising amok, literally. Second, I'm going to make it sweet, simple, and to the point because they're being obnoxious at the moment. So, the green room, I pulled from that one part where a band member stated no one wants to starve, but if you take it all virtual, you lose the texture. To me, this was a way of the band saying that even if they don't make a ton of money, they would rather stay true to themselves and just produce the music for fun. To them, the fun was, in a way, like a bonding mechanism using violence, which is found throughout punk genre in general. The I wasn't brought here, I was born here. Hanif mentions that he attends shows and he noticed at a part of it, the group in the back didn't quite fit in, which he then explains that he found himself in that spot at one point. So through the green room and through this, you can find that violence is surrounding daily life and many people are blinded by it. So with that, being blinded by the violence is easy to not even notice that the violence is also what draws some people together. So like I had said, the bonding mechanism. A rock concert is revolved around violence. Mosh pits serve as a ground for their violence. In those mosh pits, they can walk away feeling safe to know that no one is going to come after them for harm that they did to them. It's a group effort. Attendees gather in mosh pits with one objective: violence, which is what I just said. The violence created in these mosh pits are a binding mechanism to keep the audience entertained while the band plays on stage. Hanif states to use it as a bond or to call it a church or to build an identity around it while knowing that everyone you can send bloody will not come back for revenge. So, like I said, you can leave that mosh pit feeling safe, not having to look over your shoulder to wonder if somebody's coming for revenge. Everybody enters those mosh pits with the same mindset. My first punk rock show ever poem by Hanif also states, at my first punk rock show ever, me and Tyler dive into the pit head first, even though 4 older boys got on jackets that say no blacks and no queers. In between the two of us, me and Tyler got that covered. This was or is yet another example of being blinded by the violence. Simple sayings such as no blacks and no queers are silent abuse to the people that those statements are pointed at. To me, I can't help but to wonder, like, who makes these rules and why must everyone else parade and align to follow your such given ideas? But whatever. In the other poem, All the Black Boys Stopped Packing Switchblades, Hanif states, but when the police came for us that night, we did not hear a sound until Danny's blade fell out of his pocket and the bullets that followed, because I guess anything can be a gun in the darkness surrounding it is hungry enough for at least that's what we've been told. When the bodies of black boys thresh against what little life they have left, tethering them to the earth, and isn't that what we've always been fed? So, in other words, this was trying to express that the lives of the black boys are never seen as important in the eyes of the world, and so they always have to fight harder to make a name for themselves. Also, this is just another way of blinded violence. Sorry, kids started walking in. So, why does punk evolve around violence. Genres of music are all tied to their own generalization, including the audience types and common grounds. According to Ambrose, one generalization that can be made, however, is that punk is inherently critical of mainstream society, calling attention to its defects. Basically, this is a way of expressing punk members use this genre to represent their own problems, whether it be personal identity, public views, or just social awkwardness. Punk as a genre uses elders' way of life to express their current lives. As Ambrose states, it should moreover be noted that the punk millennial, despite its broadly progressive values, can be rather conservative when it comes to its own mores, customs, and traditions. There is a strong sense of holding on how things were in the early days of movement and outlook that clearly clashes with punk's alleged progressivism. So, in other words, the punk members attempt to keep the way of their elders. Silent violence isn't always targeted at society. Sometimes it can be violence among an individual harming themselves. Struggling teens is just one of the many great examples for that. As Blush states, many hardcore kids turned against themselves as well as others. They craved self-destruction, often committing violence against their own bodies. In other words, this feeling of violence upon themselves for these kids were a bonding mechanism, helping them feel less accepted by everyone else. Self-violence may be done without anyone ever even knowing, which is the silence, or may be publicly spoke, and to me that's just an attempt for help, in which they should receive that help. So when combining all these examples together, I find that violence is enjoyed by some and feared by others. Violence is hidden in society all the time and can be used by people in different ways. Among the punk rock genre, violence is more or less a bonding mechanism. Punk members don't feel accepted in the daily society, so they seek less alienated terms of bonding in areas of people who feel the same way. Watching the Green Room really shows how the small band sticks out in the group of people like a sore thumb. The band was warned before going to this gig that the audience would expect or enjoy hearing their heavier music. The thought of violence was fantasized until they truly witnessed violence, which was when they walked in and seen the knife sticking out of the girl's head. Later in the movie, after being held captive and threatened several times, they found a heroin lab and then realized that those people really didn't give two shits about them. They just couldn't let their secret get out. Violence lingers in daily life. It is up to us to bring it to light or to keep it hidden in the shadows. Without this violence, life for some wouldn't be the same. An example would be punk rock members that live for the violence to feel less alienated from the world. On the other end, hippies, for example, would question whether violence is a suitable bonding mechanism. And to them, I would have to say, considering some people use this violence in a selective time and place, so they keep it confined, justifies it being a suitable bonding mechanism. Simply because without this violence, the people feel alienated in their life. Alright, I'll be out there in a minute. This is what some people look forward to all week. Mosh pits are their church, their home of acceptance. After evaluating the few examples of violence surrounding society, it's clear that the violence is part of daily life, whether or not we like to admit it. Punk rock members thrive for their violent ways of life. Again, violence to some is a bonding mechanism, and who's to say that that's wrong? Thank you for listening. I'm going to go take care of them kids.